The massive golden chamber buzzed with voices from 100 different worlds. Creatures of every shape and size filled the floating seats that circled the great hall. Some had wings, others had tentacles, and many looked nothing like anything that had ever lived on Earth. This was the Galactic Council, the most powerful group in known space. Ambassador Kor stepped forward on his 6 legs. His shell gleamed under the bright lights as he held up a small device. The room grew quiet as all eyes turned to him. He was one of the most respected members of the Council, representing the mighty hegemony that controlled over 300 star systems. "My fellow Council members," Kor began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Today we discuss a petition from a small world called Earth. The creatures there call themselves humans, and they want to join our great alliance." A wave of soft sounds filled the room. Some species clicked, others hummed, and a few made noises that sounded like laughter. The idea seemed funny to most of them. Kor activated his device and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a blue and green planet with one small moon. This is their world. They have been sending messages into space for less than 100 of their years. They have visited their own moon only a few times and have never traveled beyond their home system. Prime Node 7, a massive machine intelligence, spoke next. Its voice came from speakers built into the walls. "What weapons do they possess? How many worlds have they conquered?" "None," Kor replied, and this time the laughter was louder. "They still fight each other with metal projectiles and chemical explosives. Their largest ships are barely big enough to carry a few dozen of their kind. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no way to travel faster than light." The laughter grew even louder. A creature that looked like a giant butterfly fluttered its wings in amusement. "How did they even send us a message if they cannot travel between stars?" "They used radio waves," Kor explained. "Very primitive. The message took over 4,000 years to reach us." This brought a new round of sounds from the assembled aliens. The idea that anyone would use radio waves for long-distance communication seemed absurd to beings who could send thoughts across the galaxy in seconds. "But here is the strangest part," Kor continued. "These humans have stories, legends they tell their young. Tales of great human warriors who conquered entire star systems. They speak of fleets so large they could block out the light of stars. They tell stories of weapons that could destroy whole planets." The room erupted in what could only be called delighted laughter. A creature made of living crystal chimed like bells. Primitive minds often create fantasies about power they do not possess. It is quite common among young species. "Indeed," agreed a being that looked like a floating jellyfish. "My people study such things. When a species first looks at the stars, they often imagine themselves as great conquerors. It helps them feel less small and afraid." Prime Node 7's voice cut through the noise. "Have these humans actually done anything noteworthy? Any scientific breakthroughs? Any unique technologies?" Kor checked his notes. "They did split one of their smallest atoms to create crude bombs. They also built simple computers, though nothing approaching true artificial intelligence. Oh, and they created something they call the Internet, which lets them share information across their planet." The laughter was becoming harder to control. The idea that splitting atoms was considered an achievement seemed incredibly funny to beings who could manipulate the fabric of space itself. "What about their biology?" asked a snake-like creature. "Are they physically impressive, strong, fast, durable?" "Quite the opposite," Kor replied. "They are fragile creatures made mostly of water. They cannot survive in most environments without artificial protection. They live for less than 100 of their years. They require constant food and water. They even need to spend 1/3 of their time unconscious in something they call sleep." This brought the biggest laugh yet. The idea of needing to sleep seemed ridiculous to species that had evolved beyond such basic needs thousands of years ago. A voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Vex, one of the oldest members of the council. His people had been traveling between stars when most other species were still learning to make fire. I have studied the humans' transmissions for many years. They are not without interesting qualities. They show great creativity and surprising determination. The laughter died down a little. When Vex spoke, others usually listened. However, Vex continued, they are clearly not ready for contact with galactic civilization. They still fight wars over resources that are common throughout the galaxy. They cannot even agree on how to govern their single world. They would be eaten alive by the realities of interstellar politics. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. This made sense to everyone present. I propose we continue to monitor them, Vex said. Perhaps in a few thousand years, they will develop enough to be worth considering again. For now, they should remain in their home system where they cannot cause trouble or be harmed by forces beyond their understanding. Kor nodded. All in favor of denying the human petition and maintaining the quarantine around their system? Every member of the council raised their hand, claw, tentacle, or other appendage. The vote was unanimous. The matter is settled, Kor announced. The humans will remain isolated until they prove themselves worthy of our attention. Meeting dismissed. As the council members began to leave, many were still making the sounds of amusement their species used for laughter. The very idea of humans as anything other than primitive creatures seemed absurd. They spoke of the human legends as they walked, stories of mighty fleets and terrible weapons, such obvious fantasies, such primitive wishful thinking. How could anyone take such tales seriously? If they had looked more carefully at those legends, they might have noticed something interesting. The stories were incredibly detailed. They described specific battle tactics, exact weapon designs, and precise star maps. They contained technical information that seemed far too advanced for such a young species to imagine, but the council was too busy laughing to notice. They were too confident in their superiority to ask difficult questions. They assumed they knew everything about these strange little creatures from the small blue world. It was a mistake that would soon cost them everything. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning while Dr. Alex Stone was drinking his third cup of coffee. He worked alone in a small office buried deep under the mountains of Colorado, surrounded by computers and radio equipment that most people would find confusing. His job was simple but important. He listened to space. For 15 years, Alex had been part of a secret program called Deep Watch. Only a few dozen people on Earth knew it existed. Their mission was to monitor alien communications and try to understand what was happening in the galaxy around them. Most days, Alex heard nothing but static and strange signals he could not understand. Today was different. The computer screen in front of him suddenly filled with symbols that looked almost familiar. His translation software, built using patterns from years of collected alien messages, began working frantically. Slowly, words appeared on his screen. Harvest operation approved, the message read. Target system designation Terrasol. Resource assessment, high-value metals, abundant water, suitable atmospheric conditions for processing. Estimated resistance, none. Estimated completion time, 6 standard cycles. Alex nearly dropped his coffee cup. Terrasol was the alien name for Earth's solar system. Someone was planning to attack his world, and they expected no resistance at all. More messages followed. Quickly, fleet movements, supply orders, and detailed discussions about the best ways to extract resources from Earth while dealing with the primitive inhabitants. The aliens were not planning to negotiate or make contact. They were planning to take everything they wanted and treat humans like annoying insects. Alex grabbed his secure phone and called the one person who would know what to do. General Laura Martinez had been in charge of Deep Watch since its beginning. She was smart, tough, and one of the few people on Earth who truly understood how dangerous the galaxy could be. "General, we have a problem," Alex said when she answered. "The aliens are coming, and they're not here to make friends." 30 minutes later, Alex stood in a secure conference room deep under the Pentagon. General Martinez sat across from him, along with several other people whose faces he recognized from classified briefings. These were the leaders of Earth's most secret programs, people who made decisions that could affect the entire planet. "Show them what you found," Martinez said. Alex connected his laptop to the room's display system. The alien messages filled the large screen, along with his translations. The room was completely silent as the officials read the plans to harvest Earth's resources and relocate its human population to suitable containment areas. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. William Parks, the head of Earth's most advanced weapons research. "Based on their fleet movements, maybe 6 months," Alex replied. "But that's not the worst part. Look at this." He brought up another set of messages. "They're talking about us like we're animals in a zoo. They think we're so primitive that we won't even understand what's happening until it's too late." The room erupted in angry voices. Some people wanted to start building weapons immediately. Others suggested trying to make contact and negotiate. A few thought they should evacuate as many people as possible to hidden underground bases. "General," Martinez raised her hand for silence. "Before we panic, there's something else you all need to see. Alex, show them the other files." Alex hesitated. These files were the strangest part of his discovery, and he was not sure anyone would believe them. "While I was decoding their messages, I found something else. References to old human legends that somehow they know about. They mention our stories about ancient space battles and powerful human fleets." "So what?" Dr. Parks asked. "Lots of cultures have myths about great warriors and mighty weapons. That's just it," Alex said. "These aren't just myths to them. In their databases, they list these legends as historical events. They talk about something they call the first human. War like it actually happened thousands of years ago." The room grew quiet again. Everyone knew Earth's history. Humans had never traveled to other stars. They had never fought wars in space. The oldest human civilizations had barely figured out agriculture, much less space travel. "There's more," Alex continued. He brought up a map showing locations across Earth. "The aliens have marked certain places on our planet as sites of concern. They're worried about these locations for some reason." The map showed red dots scattered across the globe. Each dot was placed on a location that humans considered special. Ancient stone circles, mysterious pyramids, places where old legends said great heroes had been buried or great battles had been fought. "They're afraid of tourist attractions?" someone asked. "I don't think so," Alex said. "Look at this message." A new translation appeared on the screen. "Recommend extreme caution near marked archaeological sites. Deep scans show unusual energy patterns consistent with dormant ancient technology. Suggest complete destruction of these areas before beginning harvest operations." Dr. Parks leaned forward. "Ancient technology? What ancient technology?" "That's what we need to find out," General Martinez said. "Alex, I want you to keep monitoring their communications. Find out everything you can about their timeline and their plans. Dr. Parks, start looking into these marked sites. If there's something there that scares these aliens, we need to know what it is." She turned to address the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may be facing the greatest threat in human history, but we also might be about to discover that we're not as helpless as everyone thinks. If our ancestors left us something that could help defend our world, then by God, we're going to find it." As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Alex remained behind with General Martinez. He had one more thing to show her, something too strange to share with the others. "General, there's one more message. It's different from the others. It's not from the aliens planning to attack us. It's from somewhere else entirely, and it's addressed to Earth." He brought up the final translation. The message was short, but clear. "Children of Terra, the time of awakening approaches. What was lost will be found. What was forgotten will be remembered. The stars have not forgotten their first masters, neither have we." General Martinez stared at the screen for a long moment. Where did this message come from? "I don't know," Alex admitted. It didn't come from any direction in space that I can identify. It's almost like it came from inside the Earth itself. Outside the secure conference room, the normal world continued as usual. People went to work, children played in parks, and everyone assumed that Earth was safe and isolated in its corner of the galaxy. They had no idea that alien fleets were already moving toward their world, or that somewhere beneath their feet, ancient secrets were beginning to stir. The drill bit screamed as it cut through the last layer of stone beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. Dr. Emma Torres wiped sweat from her forehead as she watched the massive boring machine finish its work. For 3 weeks, her team had been digging, straight down from a hidden chamber inside the pyramid, following energy readings that their best sensors could barely detect. "That's it," called out Pete, her lead engineer. "We've hit empty space, big empty space." Emma felt her heart racing. The government officials from America had given her team unlimited resources and told them to dig wherever their instruments detected unusual energy signatures. The pyramid had been their first choice, because the readings here were stronger than anywhere else on Earth. "Lower the camera," she ordered. A small robot descended on a cable into the darkness below. Emma watched her screen as the camera's lights revealed something that made her gasp. The space below was not a natural cave or even an ancient tomb. It was clearly artificial, with smooth walls that reflected the camera's lights like mirrors. "How big is this place?" Pete asked, staring over her shoulder at the screen. "I can't see the walls or ceiling," Emma replied. "The camera's lights aren't strong enough. This could be enormous." She made a decision that would change everything. "Prep the lift. We're going down." 20 minutes later, Emma and 3 members of her team descended into the hidden chamber. As they reached the bottom, motion sensors activated automatically, and the entire space filled with soft blue light. What they saw took their breath away. The chamber was massive, larger than any building on Earth's surface. But it was not empty. Row after row of sleek, dark objects stretched into the distance. Each one was roughly the size of a city bus, with smooth curves and no visible seams or joints. They looked like vehicles, but unlike anything humans had ever built. "Are those ships?" Pete whispered. Emma approached the nearest object. Its surface was completely black but seemed to have depth to it, like looking into still water at night. As she got closer, she noticed symbols carved along its side. The symbols looked familiar, almost like very old Egyptian writing, but not quite. "Emma," called out Dr. James Wright, the team's archaeologist. "You need to see this." She found him standing near what appeared to be a control panel built into the chamber wall. The symbols on the panel were clearly human writing, but in languages so old that Emma could barely recognize them. Some looked like the earliest forms of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Others resembled the oldest Chinese characters. A few might have been early Sanskrit. "This is impossible," James said. "These languages didn't exist when the pyramid was built. Some of them are older than civilization itself." Emma reached out to touch the panel, and suddenly everything changed. The moment her fingers made contact with the symbols, the chamber filled with a gentle humming sound. The dark ships began to glow, with the same blue light that lit the room, and then, impossibly, a voice spoke to them in perfect modern English. "Welcome, children of Terra," the voice said. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have been waiting for you." Emma's team stood frozen in shock. The voice continued, calm and warm like a favorite teacher. "Do not be afraid. You are safe here, as your ancestors were safe here long ago. I am what you might call a guardian, left behind to watch over these gifts until the day you would need them." Who are you?" Emma managed to ask. "I am the memory of those who came before you, your people, from a time when humanity walked among the stars as easily as you now walk across the surface of your world. These ships and others like them were hidden across your planet when the great forgetting began." The voice paused, and Emma could almost feel it thinking. Your enemies approach. The same enemies who drove your ancestors back to this single world and made them forget their true heritage. They believe you are weak and helpless. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Images began appearing in the air around them, like holograms, but clearer than anything Emma had ever seen. The images showed Earth as it had been long ago, but not the primitive Earth of history books. This Earth was surrounded by massive space, stations and ships that dwarfed anything humans had ever imagined. We were explorers then, the Guardian explained. We had spread to dozens of star systems and made contact with hundreds of alien species. We shared knowledge and built a peaceful alliance among the stars. The images changed, showing alien fleets attacking human colonies and space stations. But some species feared our growth. They could not accept that young humans had achieved, in centuries, what had taken them thousands of years. They formed a secret alliance and attacked us when we were least prepared. Emma watched in horror as human worlds burned and great ships fell from the sky. We were not destroyed, but we were driven back. Our enemies used weapons that could affect memory itself, making our people forget their achievements and abilities. Earth became a prison disguised as a home. But you prepared for this, Emma said, beginning to understand. Yes. We hid ships and knowledge in places our enemies would never think to look. We altered human genetics in subtle ways, ensuring that, when the time came, you would be able to interface with our technology and remember what was lost. The Guardian's voice became urgent. That time is now. Your enemies believe they are about to harvest a defenseless world. Instead, they are about to face the return of humanity's true power. One of the dark ships near Emma began to change. Its surface became transparent, revealing a cockpit designed perfectly for human proportions. Lights and controls inside the ship began to glow, as if inviting her to enter. The ships are alive in their own way, the Guardian explained. They have been waiting for human pilots for thousands of years. When you connect with them, you will remember skills and knowledge your conscious mind has never learned. Emma looked at her team. They were all staring at her with a mixture of fear and excitement. There are sites like this all over the world, the Guardian continued. Beneath Stonehenge, under the ice of Antarctica, hidden in the deepest parts of the ocean. Each contains ships and weapons that your ancestors left for this day. How many ships? Pete asked. Enough, the Guardian replied simply. Your enemies. Come with hundreds of vessels, believing this will be sufficient to conquer a primitive world. They do not know that beneath their target lies a fleet that once darkened the skies of their home worlds. Emma made her choice. She walked to the open ship and climbed inside. The moment she sat in the pilot's seat, her mind exploded with new knowledge. She suddenly understood how to fly between stars, how to fight in the vacuum of space, and how to use weapons that could turn asteroids into dust. But more than that, she remembered. Not her own memories, but the memories of her species. She remembered the pride of humanity's first steps among the stars, the joy of discovering new worlds, and the determination to protect other species from the kind of bullies who were now approaching Earth. Contact the others, she said to Pete, her voice steady and confident in a way that surprised even her. Tell them we found what we were looking for. Tell them it's time to wake up the fleet. Above them, alien ships were already moving toward Earth, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that beneath the planet they planned to harvest, humanity's true children were finally coming home. Fleet Commander Drac stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive blue world grow larger on his main screen. Behind him spread the largest invasion force the hegemony had assembled in decades. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single shot. 200 smaller warships loaded with enough firepower to crack planets, and countless support vessels carrying the equipment needed to strip Earth of everything valuable. Distance to target? Drac asked his weapons officer. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Commander. All weapon systems are charged and ready. Drac nodded with satisfaction. This would be the easiest conquest in hegemony history. The humans had no space fleet, no energy shields, and no weapons capable of reaching beyond their own atmosphere. Intelligence reports showed they were still fighting each other with primitive chemical explosives and metal bullets. Open a communication. Channel to the planet, Drac ordered. Let's give them a chance to surrender before we begin the harvest. The communication officer worked for several seconds before shaking his head. Sir, they're not responding to any of our standard frequencies. Should I try the emergency channels? Don't bother, Drac said. They probably don't even understand what they're seeing. Begin bombardment of their major population centers. Make it quick and clean. As his weapons officer prepared to fire, something strange happened. The space around Drac's fleet began to shimmer and distort, like heat waves, rising from hot pavement. At first, he assumed it was some kind of sensor malfunction. Then the first human ship appeared. It seemed to unfold from empty space itself, a sleek black vessel about half the size of Drac's smallest warship. Its hull seemed to absorb light, rather, then reflect it, making it difficult to see clearly even when looking directly at it. Commander, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting an unknown vessel off our starboard side. Destroy it, Drac ordered without hesitation. But before his weapons could fire, another ship appeared. Then another, then dozens more. Within minutes, space around the hegemony fleet was filled with black ships that seemed to materialize from nowhere. How many? Drac demanded. I can't get an accurate count, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology I've never seen before. But there are at least several hundred of them. Drac felt the first stirring of concern. Several 100 ships was still nothing compared to his massive fleet. But where had they come from? Human technology was supposed to be centuries behind hegemony standards. Then, the human ships opened fire. The weapons they used were unlike anything in Drac's experience. Instead of plasma bolts or particle beams, they fired concentrated streams of energy that seemed to bend space itself. When these beams hit hegemony shields, they didn't bounce off or drain the shield power. They simply passed through as if the shields weren't there at all. Drac watched in horror as one of his dreadnoughts, a ship that had survived dozens of major battles, simply came apart. The human weapon had sliced through its hull like a knife, through paper, cutting the massive vessel into neat sections that drifted apart in space. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships return fire!" The hegemony fleet responded with everything they had. Hundreds of plasma cannons and missile launchers fired at once, filling space with deadly energy. It should have been more than enough to destroy the smaller human vessels. But the human ships moved like living things. They twisted and turned in ways that seemed to defy physics, dodging between plasma bolts and dancing around exploding missiles. Their movements were so precise and coordinated that they seemed to be controlled by a single mind. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "our weapons can't lock onto them. They're moving too fast and their hulls don't reflect our targeting beams properly." More human ships continued to appear from nowhere. What had started as hundreds was now clearly thousands. They moved in perfect formation, each ship somehow knowing exactly where every other ship would be. Drac's communication system suddenly crackled to life. A human voice spoke in perfect hegemony language, calm and clear despite the battle raging around them. "Fleet Commander Drac of the Hegemony 3rd Harvest Fleet. This is Admiral Emma Torres of the Human Defense Force. You came here to strip our world of resources and treat our people like animals. That was a mistake." Drac stared at his screen. The voice was coming from one of the human ships, but his sensors couldn't identify which one. How did they know his name? How did they speak his language so perfectly? "You have exactly 60 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to surrender," the voice continued. "This is your only warning." "Never," Drac shouted back. "We are the hegemony. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. You primitive humans are nothing compared to our power." 60 seconds, the human voice replied calmly. Drac turned to his weapons. "Officer, target their largest ships and fire everything we have." The hegemony fleet unleashed its full power. Every weapon on every ship fired at once, creating a storm of energy that should have vaporized anything in its path. But the human ships simply weren't where the weapons were aimed. They had moved with impossible speed and precision, repositioning themselves in the brief seconds between targeting and firing. "Time's up," Admiral Torres said. What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for generations. The human ships didn't just attack the hegemony fleet. They dissected it. Each human vessel seemed to know exactly where to strike each alien ship to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. They targeted weapon systems first, leaving the hegemony ships helpless. Then they destroyed engines, trapping the alien vessels in space. Finally, they systematically took apart each ship piece by piece, allowing the crews time to escape in life pods before delivering killing blows. The entire battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, the pride of the hegemony fleet was nothing but drifting wreckage and escape pods. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Most of them didn't even have scorch marks on their hulls. Drac found himself floating in a life pod with a handful of his surviving officers, watching human ships collect other survivors from the battle. He had gone from commanding the most powerful invasion force in the galaxy to being a refugee in the space of a few hours. The human admiral's voice came over his pod's communication system one final time. "Commander Drac, your crews will be returned to hegemony space with a message for your leaders. Tell them that Earth is no longer the helpless world they thought it was. Tell them that humanity remembers what was taken from us, and we're not in a forgiving mood." The communication paused for a moment before continuing. "And tell them to look up at their night skies. They're about to see something that their ancestors used to fear. They're about to see human fleets darkening the stars." Once again, as Drac's life pod was pulled into the hold of a human rescue ship, he caught a glimpse through the viewport of something that made his blood freeze. The space around Earth was filled with human vessels, not hundreds or thousands, but tens of thousands. Ships of every size and design, all bearing the same dark hulls that seemed to drink in the light of stars. The legends were true. The stories that galactic civilizations told their young about terrible human fleets that could block out entire suns were not myths at all. They were warnings, and now, after thousands of years of hiding, the humans were back. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The hegemony's great harvest fleet, the pride of their military, had been completely destroyed by humans. Species that had laughed at Earth's petition for membership now watched their communication networks with growing fear as reports came in from across known space. Human ships were everywhere. On Corax Prime, homeworld of the hegemony, Chancellor Vex received the survivors of Drac's fleet in his private chambers. The once proud fleet commander could barely stand as he delivered his report. "They knew everything about us," Drac said, his voice shaking. "Our names, our ranks, our battle plans. They spoke our language perfectly and fought like they had been studying our tactics for centuries." Vex listened in silence as Drac described weapons that passed through shields, ships that moved like living things, and humans who fought with skills that seemed impossible for such a young species. "How many ships did they have?" Vex asked. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands." The space around their world was so full of vessels that they blocked out the light of their own star. "And Chancellor," Drac paused, struggling to find words. "They weren't trying to kill us. They could have destroyed every ship in our fleet in minutes, but they chose to disable us instead. They let our crews escape before destroying our vessels. This was perhaps the most frightening news of all. An enemy that killed in rage was dangerous, but predictable. An enemy that showed mercy while demonstrating overwhelming power was something else entirely. "Leave me," Vex ordered. When he was alone, he activated his private communication system and sent an urgent message to every hegemony world. Recall all fleets immediately. Avoid human space at all costs. Prepare for siege. But it was already too late. On the crystal world of Nethys, home to the beings who had found human legends so amusing, the population looked up at their triple suns to see something that had never appeared in their skies before. Dark shapes were moving between the stars, growing larger as they approached. Human ships, hundreds of them, taking positions around their world. The lead ship broadcast a message in perfect Nethesian crystal song. People of Nethys, this is Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Force. We have not come as conquerors. We have come to collect a debt. On the gas giant Florax, the floating cities of the Nefari found themselves surrounded by human vessels that somehow operated perfectly in their high-pressure atmosphere. On the machine world of Prime Node, the artificial intelligences discovered that human technology could interface with their systems in ways they had thought impossible. Everywhere the old council members had once laughed at human legends, human fleets now darkened their skies. But the humans did not attack. Instead, they sent ambassadors. Admiral Torres herself arrived on Corax Prime in a small shuttle, accompanied by only a few guards. She walked into the hegemony's capital city as if she owned it, which in many ways she now did. The thousands of human ships in orbit made that point very clear. Chancellor Vex met her in the same golden chamber where the Galactic Council had once rejected Earth's petition. Now the roles were reversed. Vex found himself bowing to a human while trying to hide his fear. "Admiral Torres," he said carefully, "to what do we owe this honor?" Emma looked around the chamber with interest. Her enhanced memories, awakened by the ancient ships, gave her perfect recall of every slight and insult the Council had directed at humanity. "I remember this room," she said quietly. "Not personally, of course, but my people's memories run deep now. This is where you laughed at us, where you decided we were too primitive to deserve a place among civilized species." Vex said nothing. What could he say? "My ancestors once built an alliance among the stars," Emma continued. "They helped young species, shared knowledge freely, and tried to create a galaxy where everyone could grow and prosper. Do you know what happened to that alliance, Chancellor? The histories say it fell to internal conflicts," Vex replied carefully. Emma smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "The histories lie. It was destroyed by species like yours. Older civilizations who could not accept that young humans had achieved so much so quickly. You formed a secret coalition and attacked us when we were trying to help others." She walked to the center of the chamber, standing in the exact spot where Kor had once presented humanity's petition. "But we prepared for your betrayal. We hid ships and knowledge across our homeworld, waiting for the day when our children would need them. That day has come." "What do you want from us?" Vex asked. "Justice," Emma replied simply. "The hegemony has enslaved 17 different species over the past 1,000 years. You strip mine their worlds and use their people as disposable labor. That ends today." She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber. It showed hegemony slave worlds, mining operations, and processing facilities where captured aliens were forced to work in terrible conditions. You have 72 hours to begin releasing every slave in your territory. You will provide them with ships and supplies to return to their homeworlds. You will also provide full compensation for the resources you have stolen over the centuries. Vex's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "That would destroy our entire economy. Our civilization would collapse." "Then you should have thought of that before you built your civilization on the suffering of others," Emma said coldly. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On every world where the old council members had once mocked humanity, human ambassadors were now delivering ultimatums. The message was always the same: release your slaves, return stolen resources, and treat other species with respect or face the consequences. Some worlds chose to cooperate immediately. The crystal beings of Nethys, who had once chimed with laughter at human legends, now sang songs of apology as they freed the mining slaves they had kept hidden for centuries. The machine intelligences of Prime Node calculated that resistance was impossible and began transferring resources to the species they had exploited. Others chose to fight. The Vorthan Empire, confident in their advanced shields and powerful weapons, assembled their entire fleet to face the human ships orbiting their homeworld. It was a mistake they made only once. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vorthan fleet was scrap metal floating in space, and their planet was surrounded by even more human vessels. But even then, the humans showed restraint. They targeted only military installations and weapons platforms. Civilian areas were left untouched. When Vorthan leaders finally agreed to negotiate, they found human medical ships already treating their wounded and human engineers helping to repair non-military damage. "We don't want to rule you," Admiral Torres explained to the assembled Vorthan leadership. "We want you to remember how to be decent. Our ancestors tried to teach the galaxy that strength should be used to protect others, not to prey on them. It's a lesson some of you still need to learn." Within 6 months, the galaxy had changed completely. The old power structures built on exploitation and fear had crumbled. In their place, humanity established something that had never existed before: a true confederation based on mutual respect and shared defense. Species that joined willingly found themselves protected by human fleets and given access to technologies that had been hidden for millennia. Those that refused found themselves isolated and cut off from galactic trade routes that were now patrolled by human ships. The transformation was not always peaceful. Some species tried to form alliances against humanity, only to discover that their communications were being monitored and their plans anticipated. Others attempted to develop new weapons that could penetrate human defenses, but found that human technology was always one step ahead. But gradually, even the most stubborn civilizations began to understand the new reality. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and they were not going away. Dr. Alex Stone, the man who had first detected the alien invasion plans, now worked in a gleaming space station orbiting Earth. His job was still to monitor communications, but now he was looking for signs of species that needed help, rather than threats to his homeworld. "Any interesting signals today?" Admiral Torres asked as she visited his facility. "Actually, yes," Alex replied, bringing up a display showing a distant star system. "I'm picking up distress calls from a species called the Keth. Apparently, they're being attacked by raiders from the old hegemony territories. Some of Vex's people who refuse to accept the new order." Emma nodded. "Prep a response fleet. Make sure the Keth know that help is coming." "Already done," Alex said with a smile. "I sent the message an hour ago. Our ships should reach them by tomorrow." As Emma left the communications center, she paused to look out at the space around Earth. The planet was surrounded by human vessels, but these were not warships. They were exploration ships preparing to visit new worlds, hospital ships ready to provide aid wherever it was needed, and transport vessels carrying supplies to species that were rebuilding after centuries of oppression. The ancient Guardian's voice had been right. Humanity had awakened to reclaim its place among the stars. But they had not returned as conquerors. They had returned as protectors, just as their ancestors had been before the Great Betrayal. The galaxy had laughed at human legends for thousands of years. Stories of mighty fleets and noble warriors who fought to defend the innocent had seemed like primitive fantasies to advanced civilizations. Now those same civilizations understood the truth. The legends had never been fantasies at all. They had been promises. Promises that one day, when the galaxy needed them most, humanity would return to fulfill the destiny their ancestors had begun. And in the end, that was exactly what they had done. The humans who had once been dismissed as primitive children had become the galaxy's guardians, just as the old stories had always said they would be. The laughter had stopped. The reckoning was complete. And for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy was at peace.